In this video, we are going to be adding mixed numbers, all with unlike denominators. Some of these will require a little bit of regrouping at the end, but just a few of them will. All right, if you have the companion assignment, we're going to go ahead and do all 10 of these. So this video is going to be a little bit longer, but we are going to go through all 10 of the practice problems if you have the companion assignment. All right, number 1, 4 2/3 plus, I don't know why I wrote a T there, plus 4 1/4. Now, and as with all of these, my denominators are unlike. So because my denominators are unlike, I have to find a common denominator each time. Now, the process I'm going to use to find a common denominator is that I'm going to multiply the denominators every time. Now, some of them, as we'll see in a few of the other problems, some of them I can do some different things that will have the denominators actually be smaller. But I'm going to stay consistent with my process. Some of you, when you do this, you may want to use a different common denominator, and that's fine. We still should get the same final answer regardless of what common denominator that we use. All right, so 4 2/3, since I'm going to multiply my denominators, I'm going to multiply 3 by 4. My common denominator is going to be 12. And then 4 1/4, I'm going to multiply my denominator by 3. Again, giving my 12 as my common denominator. All right, whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So 2 times 4 gives me 8. 1 times 3 gives me 3. And so now I'm ready to add. So I've got 8/12. Actually, let's start with the whole numbers. So let's add the whole numbers first, just so I don't forget about them. So I got 4 plus 4, which is going to give me 8. And then 8/12 plus 3/12 gives me 11/12. And that will be my final answer. All right, number 2. Number 2, we're going to have 3 2/10 plus 6 1/2. Now this is one of those cases where multiplying the denominators is actually going to give me a bigger denominator than what I need. I could actually use 10 as the denominator, where I multiply 1/2 by 5/5. So you're welcome to do that. We're going to get the same answer at the end regardless, but I'm still going to stay with my process, and I'm going to multiply my denominators to get my common denominator. So I'm going to multiply 10 by 2, and 20 will be my common denominator. And then do the same here. And then my 6 1/2, I'm going to multiply by 10/10. So again, I could have used 10 and just changed this, but as you'll see, this will give us the same answer regardless. All right, my denominators are the same now, so I am ready to add. So 4/20 plus 10/20 is actually, let's do the whole numbers again. I'm sorry, I keep jumping to the fractions. I want to make sure I do the whole numbers first. So 3 plus 6 gives me 9, and then 4/20 plus 10/20 gives me 14/20. Now I can simplify 14/20 because both 14 and 20 are even numbers. So I can divide both top and bottom by 2. And that's going to give me 7/10. And so my final answer is 9 7/10. Now what we would have found is, and I'm going to go ahead and show you this real quick since I've talked about it. What we would have found is if I had chosen to leave the 10 as my common denominator, and I changed this fraction to have a 10, I would have multiplied by 5, top and bottom, and so I would have had 6 5/10. So my whole numbers wouldn't have changed. 3 plus 6 gives me 9, and 2/10 plus 5/10 would have given me 7/10. So either way, I'm going to get to the correct answer. But this is one of those situations where using the common denominator by multiplying my denominators, that's going to have me reducing at the end of the process, which is fine because we still get to the same answer either way. All right, on to number 3. Number 3 is 3 6/10 plus 4 3/5. And again, this is a situation where I could use 10 as my common denominator again, because 5, or excuse me, 10 is a multiple of 5. But I'm going to go ahead and stay consistent, and I'm going to multiply my denominators. So my common denominator will be 50. So whatever I do to my numerator, or excuse me, whatever I do to my denominator, I must also do to my numerator. My denominators now are the same, so I am ready to add. 3 plus 4 gives me 7, and 30/50 plus 30/50 is going to give me 60/50. Now, I've got an improper fraction here. So because I have an improper fraction, I am going to need to divide at some point. Now, I can also reduce. I can simplify. I can find an equivalent that's in a simpler form. And it actually does not matter when I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just divide now. And so I'm going to do my division over here off to the side. So I'm going to have 60 divided by 50. 50 goes into 60 one time. 1 times 50 is 50. And so my remainder is 10/50. So now I've got 7 plus 1 10/50, which is going to give me 8 10/50. But 8 10/50, 10/50 is not in its simplest form, so I need to simplify. Now, both of these are even numbers, so I could divide both by 2, or I could look and see if there's a different number I could use. Now, 10 and 50 are both multiples of 5. They're also both multiples of 10. So I'm going to go ahead and divide top and bottom by 10, because since this is 10, I know I'm going to end up with a 1 on the top, and that should be in its simplest form. So 10 divided by 10 is 1, 5 divided by 10 is 5, and so my final answer is 8 1/5. Now I could have over here, I could have simplified, I could have reduced before I divided, and had I done that, I would have ended up with, let me do it in a different color so you can see it. I would have, if I divided top and bottom by 10 then, I would have ended up with 6/5. And then if I do that division, if I do 6 divided by 5, 5 goes into 6 one time, and then my remainder is 1/5. So I'm going to end up with the same answer no matter what, because 7 1/5, or excuse me, 7 plus 1 1/5 would have given me the 8 1/5. Would have ended up with the same answer, so it didn't really matter which order I did it in. But I like to simplify at the end. That's just me. Again, it won't change your answer. You can simplify at any point as long as you do it at the end of the problem. All right, let's do number 4. Number 4 is 4 1/2 plus 5 2/5. I'm going to multiply my denominators to get my common denominator, which will be 10. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So I end up with 4 and 5/10 plus 5 and 4/10. 4 times 5, or excuse me, 4 plus 5 is 9. 5/10 plus 4/10 gives me 9/10. Like that one. Nice and cut and dry. No reducing, no simplification, no regrouping. All right, on to number 5. 5 is 5 and 2/4 plus 4 and 1/3. Once again, I'm going to multiply my denominators to give me a common denominator of 12. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So now I've got 5 and 6/12 plus 4 and 4/12. 5 plus 4 is 9. 6/12 plus 4/12 gives me 10/12. All right, now because 10 and 12 are even numbers, that means I need to simplify. I need to reduce, so I'm going to divide top and bottom by 2, which give me 5/6. And so my final answer is 9 and 5/6. Okay, on to number 6. Number 6 is 6 and 2/3 plus 8 and 1/2. Multiply my denominators to get my common denominator, which will be 6. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So I end up with 6 and 4/6 plus 8 and 3/6. 6 plus 8 is 14. 4/6 plus 3/6 is 7/6. Now because 7/6 is improper, I've got to change that to a proper fraction. All right, so some of you will be able to look at this and say, you know what, I know that 6/6 is 1 whole. And so if I pull that 6/6 out, I'm going to be left with 1/6. And so this would become then 14 plus 1 plus 1/6, which would give me 15 and 1/6, which is totally okay to do. But I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of doing the division, because just as I want this to just be a continuous reminder that these fractions are just division problems in disguise. So 6 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. Our remainder is 1/6. So I get to the same place. Here's my 1 and 1/6 here. Here's my 1 and 1/6 here. So I'm going to get 14 plus 1 and 1/6, which will give me 15 and 1/6. I'm going to get to the same place as far as my answer goes. And some of you are at the point now where you can do this, where you know, hey, I can just pull 1 whole out of that by pulling 6/6 out of it and having 1/6 left over. All right, on to number 7. So number 7 is 2 and 7/10 plus 4 and 2/3. All right, I'm going to multiply my denominators. So my common denominator is 30. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So I'm going to end up with 2 and 21/30 plus 4 and 20/30. 2 plus 4 gives me 6. 21/30 plus 20/30 is going to give me 41/30. Now once again, this is improper. So, just like we did before, some of you may be able to look at this and say, you know what, I can pull one whole, 30 over 30, out of that and be left with 11/30. And so I end up with 6 plus 1, because that 1's coming from this one whole right here that I pulled out, plus 11/30, and get 7 and 11/30. And again, if you can do that, just kind of thinking it through like that, that's fantastic. But if you need to do the division, do the division. All right, most of these division problems you're going to be setting up are pretty simple. And you're usually going to get 1 and then some remainder. All right, so 30 goes into 41 one time. 1 times 30 is 30. My remainder is 11/30. So again, I'm ending up with that 1 and 11/30, just like I got down here. So 6 plus 1 and 11/30 gives me 7 and 11/30. Okay. All right, number 8. Number 8 is 6 and 1/5 plus 4 and 1/4. So I'm going to multiply my denominators to get my common denominator, which will be 20. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So I end up with 6 and 4/20 plus 4 and 5/20. 6 plus 4 is 10. 4/20 plus 5/20 gives me 9/20. And 9/20 is in its simplest form, and it is proper fraction, so that is my answer. I like that one. All right, on to number 9. So number 9 is 2 and 1/2 plus 8 and 2/3. Going to multiply my denominators to get my common denominator, which will be 6. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. 2 plus 8 gives me 10. 3/6 plus 4/6 gives me 7/6. So once again, I'm left with an improper fraction. So if you are able to look at this and say, you know what, that is 6/6 with 1/6 left over. So we've got 10 plus 1 plus 1/6. Remember, this 1 is coming from this one whole that we're pulling out right here to give me 11 and 1/6. If you're able to do that, that's awesome. But if you need to do the division, do the division. Like I said a moment ago, these division problems are usually going to be pretty simple. Your answer is usually going to be 1 and then some kind of a fraction remainder. 1 times 6 is 6. So in this case, my answer is 1 and 1/6. So if you need to go through that process, go through it. And so got my whole number plus my answer for my division problem gives me 11 and 1/6. on to the last problem. Save the best for last. So number 10, 5 4/10 plus 4 2/3. So as usual, I'm going to multiply my denominators to get my common denominator, which in this case will be 30. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So I'm left with 5 12/30 plus 4 20/30. 5 plus 4 gives me 9. 12/30 plus 20/30 gives me 32/30. 32/30 is improper, so I'm going to come over here and do the division. Again, if you can pull this out and say, you know what, I know that 30/30 would be 1 whole, so that would just leave 2/30 left over. So I've got my 9, then plus my 1 whole that I just pulled out, plus my 2/30, which is left over, just give me 10 2/30. Of course, then I have to simplify, so divide top and bottom by 2 because both are even numbers, and I end up with 10 1/15. All right, let's go ahead and go through with the division as well, though, so we can see it both ways. 30 goes into 32 one time. 1 times 30 is 30. 32 minus 30 is 2. And so my answer is 1 2/30. Got my 9 from over here. Got to remember my whole number. Plus 1 2/30 gives me 10 2/30. Just like I had to do down here, I've got to simplify. So divide top and bottom by 2 because they're both even. Running out of room. And so my final answer is 10 1/15. Ran out of room on that one. Alright, once again, if you're watching this video and you have the companion resource, please make sure you are writing the work down as you do it. If you have been following along and you're still not sure how to do this process, even after going through all those practice problems, it might not be a bad idea to, on a piece of notebook paper, just a blank piece of paper, go back to number 1 on the video, put the sheet you just finished away, write down the problem for number 1, try to do it on your own, then watch the number 1 section of the video and see if you got the correct answer and if you did the process correctly. If you didn't, correct it and then try number 2. It's a great way to review with these videos because even though you've seen these problems before, there's a lot of computation going on. So just the practice of finding that common denominator by multiplying the denominators together, it's just great practice.